All right. Hello, my name is Yeji Cho, and today we will be presenting our work on Project Eyez in response to the Chevron challenge. I'd like to introduce the other members of Team Fourier Eyez only. And now looking at the Lost Hills oil field. Located in Kern County, California, the Lost Hills oil field produces 10.6 million barrels of crude oil equivalent per year, and in doing so, uses 94,000 megawatt hours of electricity yearly. Lost Hills purchases its electricity from PG&E, indirectly resulting in 19,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. The team's goals within this project were first to analyze how a switch to solar power would impact those emissions, and second, to develop a plan for emissions reduction and optimization of field operations. Recently, Lost Hills has begun the construction of an on-site solar power generation program, encompassing 44,000 megawatt hours annually supplied to the field. Our team analyzed the impact of this program, but found that current data is taken in terms of LCFS credits, or the tax incentive for industrial solar power. These credits are not equivalent to units of emissions reduced and therefore provide a less practical assessment of the solar project. Thus, our team used power source distribution data from PG&E alongside the carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per energy source in order to calculate the emissions reduced from a switch to solar. We found that the solar project would lead to a 5,600 metric ton reduction in carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, or a 29.6% drop. This number represents great progress, and now I'd like to introduce Alec, who will be expanding upon our team's plan.
Thanks, Yasmin. So in order to uphold Chevron's mission of addressing climate change by lowering carbon intensity, increasing renewables, and investing in breakthrough technologies, our team considered a variety of major emission sources. First, we looked at Scope 1 emissions, which encompass operations directly related to the oil field, and discovered that unexpected and unaddressed leaks, as well as the venting or flaring of excess methane production, actually accounted for the largest contribution to greenhouse gas emissions from any of Lost Hills sources. Next, we consider Scope 2 emissions, which considers emissions unrelated to the direct operations of the field, such as purchasing electricity during peak hours or during the night. And in order to address these issues, our team developed a 5+ year implementation plan. We wanted to first pilot some programs on Lost Hills in order to determine if they're feasible and if they will produce the results that we desire. And then within 2, maybe 3 years, we would scale these programs up to encompass the entire field. Next, we would increase battery capacity of our solar panels, or for our solar panels, while also considering future ventures that may help us further reduce carbon emissions on site. So in terms of technologies we would like to pilot on this field, we came up with 2 ideas that we believe would really help reduce methane emissions. First, we have acoustic monitoring sensors, which use acoustics or sound in order to determine the health of a well, or to determine whether or not wells are pulling out excess methane, or whether or not there's a leak in the well. We also considered methane detection drones, which can fly in programmable patrols and detect methane leaks through IR lasers or cameras or other equipment strapped onto the drone. We then considered what our implementation plan would be for the initial piloting process. We thought 50 to 100 wells being equipped with acoustic monitoring sensors and 5 drones being deployed onto the field between 1 to 2 years. This will allow us to determine whether each of the technologies works independently or if it would be best to have 2 of them together. Furthermore, we can use the drone to determine whether or not acoustic monitoring sensors are actually doing their job and vice versa. And now I'd like to pass it on to Brent, who will be talking about our implementation plan for the long term and what those effects might have for Lost Hills overall. Brent?
Thanks, Alec. So currently, over 25,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent from methane are leaked each year at Lost Hills, making leakage an important factor and one that should be focused on in maintaining Chevron's goal of reducing methane emissions by 25% by 2023. So together, the acoustic monitoring and the drones at full scale, in the future of our timeline plan, would decrease 300 times the maintenance time that is currently required, while also providing the company $5 million per year in savings through the automated efficiency optimization. Now, the safety of the surrounding neighborhoods and communities, as well as the workers, would also be improved through the technology, as well as a over 70% reduction in the methane emissions through the implementation. This is really important in considering how such a legacy site like Lost Hills can be sustainable and smart in the future. And to look more at the Scope 2 side of things, I'll hand it over to Max.
Thank you, Brent. And now, in regards to Scope 2 emissions, Chevron's current plan to install lithium-ion batteries in Lost Hills is a great start, but by our estimates, the current battery capacity is only enough to power Lost Hills for approximately 4 hours after sunset. In order to properly utilize the power produced by the
Time,
solar
please
array,
wrap up your last thought.
we will need to increase battery capacity. And based on our calculations, incorporating vanadium flow batteries to do so will save Chevron approximately $1.5 million in comparison to expanding with lithium ion. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And this begins a 5-minute Q&A with the judges.
So thank you. Great presentation, very clear and clear. You had done a lot of research. So this is a heavy oil field, and I'm trying to figure out, how did you get to the methane as opposed to the heat required for the steam generation for the heavy oil field?
Yes, so we utilized Chevron's sustainability report, which reported, I believe it was 4 point something methane intensity. And based off of the production of the field and both in natural gas and oil, we were able to determine sort of the rough, and obviously it's an estimation, but a rough estimation as to the amount of methane released through the mining and extraction process. That was just based off the data we were provided, and that number is obviously an average of all U.S. sites.
Okay.
So we use an
So
average.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks. And I have one more question, then I'll turn it to Kamal. So on the, and you got cut off at the very end, so you'll just have to figure out how to shorten your talk just a little bit. But so I'm familiar with this project, and the team looked at the battery storage. So, so why do you think they didn't choose the flow batteries?
Yeah. So actually, one of the interesting things we've looked at is that vanadium flow batteries are a lot bigger than lithium ion batteries. So they take up a lot more space. The technology's actually been in recent development. I actually worked in a lab that did research on vanadium flow batteries. So it's a constantly developing technology compared to lithium ion, which has kind of been proven.
Yep.
The thing is, lithium ion is a lot cheaper when you consider it at a smaller scale, but we wanted to go, large scale, utility scale. We want to be able to harness as much excess solar power as possible. And we believe that, at a larger utility scale, you're definitely going to have to build like a huge building, huge storage tanks for vanadium flow batteries. But the interesting thing is Lost Hills is actually located in an area with a lot of free and open land. That's kind of why they were able to build these solar panels. So we believe that vanadium flow batteries would be able to be implemented on site in the future, considering that their price is actually continuously dropping and there's an excess of space for them to be implemented. But I think lithium ion batteries at the time, probably when the team decided, was at a cheaper state. And it was probably at a state where, I've seen the diagram, they're very small batteries around the solar panels.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Great presentation, and love the team name. I think I'll claim it's the best team name ever. So again, everything is really good and clear. The fact that we ran out of time at the end, I wanna hear more about your future ventures that you mentioned. I think you have electrification of the fleet is there. So tell me, larger impact future activities that you propose, and I will suggest time management will be better. So go ahead, please tell me about this slide.
Yeah, so we considered electrifying truck service fleet as a pretty big thing. So we actually did a life cycle emissions analysis of EV vehicles versus combustion engine vehicles, and we came to a number of 3.6 metric tons saved per vehicle per year. And one of our members Max did a rough calculation of how many trucks we believe are on site. And that also we kind of counted trucks on Google Earth as well. But we considered the population of Lost Hills, kind of like how many people we expect worked on the field. And we came up to a number of around 30 to maybe even 50 trucks on field. So that's about 150 around metric tons of CO2 saved per year if you were to electrify. The other interesting thing is that you have a lot of excess generation from your solar panels. So why not use that excess generation to charge your car or vehicle rather than selling it to PG&E? And from there, we're able to save money because you're having your direct production of electricity rather than having to buy gasoline. And I know you guys produce gasoline and you produce the oil that produces the gasoline, but we think that in supply chain wise, it's a lot easier to go from straight electricity to the charging port rather than having to go through a refinery and the efficiency of the fuel going down. In terms of other things, we looked into improved carbon dioxide exchange oil recovery. So we aren't sure how well developed this process is at Lost Hills, but the concept is essentially injecting captured CO2, so from CCS systems or from refineries, injecting that CO2 into the ground to actually drive more oil out of the well, while also being able to store that CO2 into the ground. And that there's been actual improvements in that field in recent times.
Please wrap up your last thought.
So that's our final thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the last one, I'll say that the miscibility pressure of the CO2 will be an issue for the shallow reservoir. But yeah, very good presentation. Really appreciate the comments.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much for your eyes only. You guys can stop the screen share and leave the meeting. And yeah, good luck.